Welcome back to Watching Film. My name is Seth Varnadore. I'm a former high school and college football coach. Now I jump on YouTube and talk about college football. I'm teamed up with Alligator Army to talk about the Florida Gators, and unfortunately we're in the off season right now. But there is one good thing about the off season. That means it's clinic season. Um, so we get to go out to coaches' clinics, hear different coaches talk, give some pointers on how they like to coach, what they like to do in their system, how they implement their system, and things like that. I've had the opportunity to see Billy Napier twice in the past couple of weeks. Once in Tampa for the Florida Coaches Coalition clinic, where Florida high school coaches are lobbying to get paid more. And then I got to see him and Patrick Toney both speak at the Glazer Clinic in Orlando. So I thought I'd kind of go over what they talked. I'm not going to get too heavy into scheme because these clinics do charge admission, and that's kind of you pay to kind of get more detail. But I'm going to get into some of the stuff they talked about, how it may apply to this coming season, and then Coach Napier did give some interesting tidbits on stuff outside of football that I think a lot of fans will be interested to see. So I didn't get any video, but I got some photos on a iPhone that is probably past due for an upgrade. So they're a little grainy, but you'll get the picture, and we'll kind of go through these, and I'll talk about what Coach Napier and Coach Toney both talked about at these clinics. So we'll start with Coach Napier. As you can see in this grainy photo, kind of lists his career. This is kind of his opening slide to give people an idea who he is. One thing he talked about a lot at the Florida Coaches Coalition clinic, he talked about his dad as a high school coach and how he kind of inspired him to get into coaching, and a lot of good stories about his dad, a ton of good stories from his past. Actually, one of the best stories about Coach Napier came from the USF head coach Jeff Scott, who was a graduate assistant under Billy Napier at Clemson. And he told the story about he was kind of trying to tell everybody there how he thought Napier was going to be pretty successful, and kind of gave an insight into his mind when it comes to recruiting, which I think a lot of Florida fans will be interested in. So when he was at Clemson, they had a prospect coming on campus for a visit that loved to fish. So at that time, you could do whatever you wanted with the prospects when they're on campus, but you had to stay on campus with them. So Napier sent out his student assistant, William Piegler, maybe a familiar name. He's now Florida's tight end coach, hired from Michigan State. Piegler was a student assistant for Napier, brought him into the office where Jeff Scott was sitting with Napier, and he started talking to him. He said, "Listen, there's a pond on campus. I'm going to take this prospect fishing tomorrow. I've got a tree in my backyard. I want you to go get the tree, take it to the dock." And Jeff Scott went into detail about how Napier drew a diagram of the dock on the lake, drew a diagram of the tree, exactly how he wanted it put in the water. He was very detailed with his instructions, which kind of tracks with everything everyone said about him. So Piegler decides, okay, yes, sir, I'll do it. He's a student assistant. He's going to do what he's told. They decide to wait till it's dark so nobody sees him. Napier, wants him to get this tree out of his backyard, drop it off the front of the dock, so the fish have something to congregate around. So when the recruit comes the next day and they're fishing, they catch some fish, and he has a good experience. So Piegler goes, grabs this tree out of Napier's backyard. Him and a buddy take it out to the dock. They both unload it, one guy on one end, one guy on the other, and drop it into the lake around midnight. As soon as the tree hits the water, bang, a bunch of lights come on. It's the Clemson police. They've been following. They think they're going to drop in a body into this lake. So they got to call Napier up, and he's got to explain to him, no, it's for recruiting. And, we're bringing a guy fishing here. We want the fish to congregate around this tree. So he has a good time. It was a funny story, but it kind of really underlies how detailed Billy Napier is and how much thought he puts into these things. And you've seen that already in some of the things he's done at Florida. in terms of upgrading the food and the housing and all those kind of things. So I thought it was an interesting story just to kind of see his mindset. But one of Napier's things he stressed is something he learned from his dad. He said, people, strategy, competition. Football is a game of, those are kind of what football is a game about. It's about people first and foremost. And he said that's something he learned as a young coach kind of coming up. He had to learn that it was a people business first and foremost. Strategy, it always follows strategy and competition, but people has got to be number one. He said that's something his dad taught him, and that's something he wanted everybody to write down there. People, strategy, competition. He then went into his formula for winning. Own the ball, attack the ball. It has to do with turnovers on both sides of the ball. Situational experts. Obviously, this is when your third downs, your red zone, your clock management situations. You got to be very good at those. Master your craft. That involves players and coaches. How are you going to develop? What are you going to do to get better? I'm sure everyone saw kind of the lesson plans he had going around and that kind of stuff. Overwhelm, that kind of refers to how they want to play and kind of the style of play, and then legendary finish, just finishing games, finishing seasons. He was really kind of particular on that. So we'll kind of get into those each a little bit themselves. Own the ball, attack the ball. So own the ball. That's accountability. You see, he's got definitions up here. Accountability for all jobs concerning security of the football. It's own the ball side, right? They led the country in turnover margin last year, I believe, and they were also number one in, I believe he said, percentage of drives offensively that did not end in a turnover. So they had the lowest percentage of drives ending in a turnover. He said the key here is he never wants to give the defense a short field. He doesn't want to put his defense on the short field. If they make the other team consistently have to drive the ball down the field and not give them easy points on a short field, that's going to lead to more wins. On the other side of the ball, they attack the ball, and Toney kind of talked about this too. It's not just, they want takeaways, right? We're not just going to maybe get a tip pick or something. They want to try to cause takeaways. So this is something they game plan. They look at guys carrying the ball. Does this punt returner, is he loose with the ball? Is this slot receiver loose with the ball? And that is part of their game plan. They will relay to players, hey, when number 9 has the ball, we are looking to rip it and strip it. When number 15 has the ball, he's susceptible to us taking the ball away, right? So this is something they rep and practice, they detail in their game plans, and they're really intentional about it. So I thought that was interesting, just kind of in terms of the game planning down to which players they should attack to try to cause these turnovers. Situation experts. One, he talked about, you see he's got a definition up there, circumstances within the game relative to time, down, distance, and field zone, right? So he wants them to understand where they are on the field, obviously the game time, and then down and distance is the one you think about a lot. One kind of instance one area of the field he talked about in a little more detail is kind of the fringe red zone area. So he's got the area from where your kicker can make it to the red zone, he calls the fringe. Then obviously you have the red zone. And then as you get further closer to the goal line, he's got different zones. But he said this is something he learned from Bill Belichick. He called them 4-point plays. And I talked about it with Bud Davis last week a little bit. But 4-point plays is basically, can I extend a drive instead of having to settle for a field goal? Can I extend a drive with a first down to where I can possibly score a touchdown, right? So 7 minus 3, there's your 4 points. He wants to score touchdowns when he gets down there. Everybody says that, but you see a lot of coaches settle for field goals on fourth downs. But this is something he really stresses. He showed a stat last year on 3rd and 1 to 3 situations, so 3rd and short situations at Louisiana. They were 17 of 17 in this area. So 4-point plays. They were 17 of 17 in that area. Able to extend drives and possibly get more points out of it. And overall, offense and defense, both sides of the ball, they were 62% overall in winning those situations. So defensively, if you can force field goals, you're obviously going to win more. Offensively, if you can score more touchdowns than field goals, you're obviously going to win more. So that's kind of what they're stressing there when they talk about situational expertise in the 4-point plays. We're gonna skip Master Your Craft. We'll kind of get to that when we talk about what Tony spoke about. Overwhelm, I didn't get the slide for that, but in terms of Overwhelm, what he was speaking about is he wanted to be aggressive with mindset and scheme. So they're going to be aggressive schematically and aggressive in their mindset. And again, we talked about that with Bud Davis last week about Napier going for it on 4th down, not being afraid to go in those positive EPA situations. And they want to be high variable. So offensively, that means they're going to show you a ton of motions, a ton of formations, different personnel groupings. And he kind of said if you're one of those defensive coordinators that draws the formation on the board every week and you have all the formations on the board, he wants that thing lined top to bottom with formations, whether they do it through motion, shifting, all that kind of stuff. He wants to really give the defense a lot of variables. He said they want to be high variable and multiple on both sides of the ball. So that's what he's talking about when he talks about Overwhelm. Legendary finish. This is kind of both inside the game and also kind of in the season. He breaks the season up into thirds. He wants to be very good at the end of the season where you understand what your team is, right? A legendary finish. They talked about, let me see if I can find the slide here. No. All right, and the legendary finish, he talked about being really good at the end of the year. I think they said they were 15-1 in November when they were at Louisiana, and that they lost their first November game. So that was something they were really good at when he was there. They were top 25 in the country in fourth quarter points scored last year, and they were 7th in the country in opponent fourth quarter points. So they won quite a few games by some large margins, but they didn't kind of take the foot off the pedal. They didn't get lax at the end. So top 25 in fourth quarter points scored, 7th last year in fourth quarter points allowed. And then, like I said, over 4 years at Louisiana, they were 15-1, and I believe he said they lost their first November game. So 15-1 in the month of November and lost their first game. So they won 15 straight in the month of November. So when you know your team and you kind of know what you have, that's when you need to kind of finish. So legendary finish, it doesn't just refer to the game, but it also refers to the season. So master your craft, this is kind of part of it. This is something he stole from Brandon Staley with the Chargers, he said. So it's hard to see, but it's talking about being a 4D Gator, being a 4-dimensional Gator. He says the 1-dimension guy is just know your assignment. If I know what I'm supposed to do, that's 1-dimensional. 2D, you need to know what everyone at your position group is going to do. So if I'm the middle linebacker, I need to know what the outside linebackers are doing as well. 3D, know what everyone on the unit is supposed to do. So if I'm the left guard, I know what the whole offense does on this play. And 4D is understanding all 22. That's a 4-dimensional Gator. That means I understand what the offense is supposed to do on this play, and I understand what the defense is supposed to do on this play. And I can explain it and get up and present like a coach both sides of the ball. He said you may not even have some coaches that are 4-dimensional, but he did single out his quarterback at Louisiana, Levi Lewis, as being a 4-dimensional player, that he was really smart. He understood exactly what was going on, and that's one of the reasons he was so good at not turning the football over, because he understood those kind of situations. So this is kind of part of the master your craft. Do you understand mentally what is happening in the game, right? And then the other part of master your craft kind of goes into what Patrick Toney talked about, which was very detailed. He gave a talk on defensive back fundamentals. He also gave a talk on third down defense, which was good. But the defensive back fundamentals part was interesting, I thought. So when Napier talked about mastering your craft, he mentioned that he wants development kind of planned down to the rep almost. So he tells his coaches, I want kind of the development for your position laid out on a yearly basis. What are you doing in the off season? What are you doing in meetings? What are you doing? And he gets it down to the drill, down to kind of the time. Hey, on this day, I'm doing 10 minutes of this drill. And he says he can even get it down to the rep, where most of these guys that have been with him for a while know, okay, in 10 minutes, I do 15 reps or whatever. So they have it down to the rep, the development planned out. And you could kind of see that when hearing Patrick Toney talk about defensive back fundamentals. He was really, really in depth. I heard some coaches that are around me say that he thought he was speaking fast. He thought he lost some people, but he was getting through a ton of stuff. He talked about how your alignment is kind of based on, you may have 4 or 5 different alignments as a defensive back, but he wants it all to look the same in terms of footwork and how you're lined up and your stance and everything. But he wants, if depending on what leverage you need to take, what the coverage is, you may line up here, you line up there, and they've got names for all the places you can line up. So he can just yell it off the sideline. If he wants you to jump inside, he'll yell the call to jump inside and be on the eye. Or if you have to jump inside and be lined up on the receiver's inside foot, there's a call for that. They have, your eye discipline was so he talked about alignment was the first thing he talked about. Eye discipline in terms of before the play, looking at the formation in terms of what's my primary read, what's my primary key, and then what's my secondary key. Everything broken down to kind of the smallest detail. But as a player, it's really nice because I can just kind of bang, 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 go from one thing to the next. And there's nothing's nebulous. Everything's kind of clear on what I'm supposed to do. So when it's clear, I can learn it. And when I can learn it and memorize it, then I can play fast, right? So, and they talk about that. They talk about the different kind of footwork. So in this coverage, I'm playing this type of footwork. In this leverage, I'm playing this type of footwork. And these are things you can rep. I worked when I was at Tusculum University. I worked with an offensive line coach that kind of taught offensive line footwork similarly. He gave you a toolbox and said, if they're lined up here and we're running this type of play, this is the footwork you need to use. If it's the same play and the guy's lined up in a different spot, use this footwork. If you have a double team, it's this footwork. So it's kind of a similar thing, giving players a big toolbox to have the exact optimal footwork, exact optimal hand placement, exact optimal conditions for every possibility, every play, that kind of stuff. And then they've got primary footwork and then secondary footwork. So primary, the first part of play, I'm doing this. Once the receiver, breaks my cushion, maybe my footwork changes to this. So they have it broken down in very, very great detail. But I think as a former player and somebody that's got into coaching, that kind of detail will make it easier to learn because you can rep these different types of footworks and the situations, and then it becomes such second nature. And that's another thing they do a good job. They understand and they've studied and they do different studies about what situations is this. If it's a nickel, which they call a star, if it's the star, all right, what kind of situations are we going to put him in coverage wise? Okay, these 5. All right, well, he's going to rep the footwork for these 5. And so when he sees it in a game, bang, he's repped it a bunch. He's repped, and the reps are based on how many times he's going to see that. So if he's only going to see this, just for hypothetically, this one or 2 times in a game, we're not going to rep it as much as something he's going to see 10 or 15 times. So very, very smart, very well thought out. And they do the same thing with tackling, which I thought was interesting. They break the tackles down into types of tackles depending on where you're, where the ball carrier is. If he's kind of right in front of me in my vision, it's a different type of tackle to where he's off the side, where it's a different type of tackle if he's maybe about to run past me and I'm not squared up. And then they talk about tackle situations. So safety and defensive back, maybe they have more tackles where I'm tackling a guy that's up against the sideline. What's the best tackle to use for that? And they break it down in very, very deep detail. And these are things they talk about. Tackle types, tackle situations. Am I inside the numbers? Am I outside the numbers? Am I outside in? Am I inside out? All these kind of things are things they teach the players. The footwork, the angles, how you're supposed to take this tackle on. Everyone in the defense knows that they drill it. And then he showed examples of the drills, and you see them show up in the game, which is always important. You don't want to drill things that don't show up in a game. So it was a really impressive talk from Patrick Toney just on, and then kind of coupled with what Napier said about mastering your craft. You can kind of see and understand how that works. And then just kind of, I think this is a good thing for probably both sides of the ball, but this is something Toney showed in his third down presentation. Make the same things look different and different things look the same. So they want to confuse the quarterback, right? Because the more looks you can give them, the tougher it will be, right? When you show them a too high look and you run cover 2, and then you show them a too high look and you run cover 1, and then you show them a too high look and maybe you roll down and play 0 and bring a 6-man blitz. Or the more you can do to confuse quarterbacks, but give them the same look at the beginning and not let them get comfortable with that look, that is what makes defenses tough to play against, right? If you consistently show the same thing and play the same way, you'll get figured out eventually. But if you show the same look and then roll at the snap, you show the same look, drop guys out, bring guys from different spots, then you become really tough to protect against, really tough to move the ball against. So that's kind of that kind of goes along with the creepers and simulated pressure stuff we talked about in the past, but a good way to look at the Florida defense. Make the same things look different and different things look the same. So then back to Napier, he talked about the new football center. So he kind of talked about recruiting and how important he thought the facility upgrade was. He said he has a picture of Urban Meyer in his office, and the carpet that is in that picture of Urban Meyer is the same carpet he has in his office still. So there has not been a ton done facility-wise. He thinks this will give Florida, will bring them back to the front of the pack in recruiting, give them a chance. He did mention that the pool on the left side here is $1.1 million pool, that they have already got $2 million in weight room equipment that'll go in that weight room that kind of has the doors out to the indoor practice facility. So, $2 million in weight room equipment. Dining will be open to all the athletes, but they're going to have a 12-person team with an executive chef. So you'll have an executive chef there for the athletes and a 12-person team working for them. This executive chef was somebody that worked with U.S. Olympic teams in the past. So somebody that's used to working with high-level athletes from a nutrition perspective. So, he thinks this is going to give them a big chance to kind of help their recruiting. And speaking of recruiting, this crude picture is just the state of Florida broken down by how many Division I players each county puts out. So he said that's kind of how they are breaking down a little bit the recruiting areas, not necessarily just geographic, but also, hey, these counties put out, I think Dade was like 53. These counties put out a lot of players, so we might need more people there than some of these counties up in North Central Florida that put out 0 Division I players a year. So he's being smart with how he breaks it down. He talked about the 4.5 hour that you want to kind of have dominate that 4.5 hours from campus. So to the west, he said that's about Pensacola. To the north, that's Macon. To the south, that's Broward County. Another thing he mentioned that was interesting, I thought, was obviously he wants to focus on Florida in that 4.5 hour radius. But he also said that he wants kind of to hit these 5 states: Florida, the Carolinas, so North and South Carolina, Alabama, and Georgia. He said of those 5 states, I think he's either 12 of 13 or 13 of 14 of the last, of national champions, 12 of the 13 or 13 of the last 14. 66% of their rosters have come from those 5 states. So that's a good percentage. 66% of rosters of the last 13 national champions have come from the Carolinas, Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. So if you can focus in those states, which he seems to kind of have a plan for, and then go and pick guys out from other states, you can probably have a pretty good team. He also said that nobody gets offered without him watching. He's not real big on offering guys real early, really young. He thinks that can kind of mess with their head. So you're not going to see Florida offer any 8th graders, I don't think. And it was just he's kind of really detailed in everything he does. This is something they had prepared. How many FBS signees are in Florida? How many Power 5? How many Group of 5? How many independents? How many are from each county? And then he splits the state up that way. So I thought that was interesting. And then this is another part of recruiting, but also retention that he talked about was the Gator Made program. You've heard that. They've got this is where they got Vernell Brown now, I believe. They've got a couple other people in there. And I thought this was kind of an interesting look at how they're going to deal with name, image, likeness, other things, and help kind of the players and the player experience. But they're going to make in May, they're going to allow football players to take micro internships. So kind of for the month of May, they can take internships, and they'll help set them up with internships and nice, and big companies to let them, get that experience. They're going to take them to a Disney leadership conference. I think that's coming up pretty soon. Obviously, the name, image, likeness stuff, they'll do kind of, I'm sure, as much as they can legally within the state law. They'll also have an opportunity to study abroad in Greece, he mentioned. So guys that want to study abroad, they'll have that opportunity. That's not something you typically get in a football program. It's tough, but they'll get that opportunity to go to Greece for a month, I believe. Business weekend in Atlanta. So I think that just happened either this past weekend or a few weeks ago. This is something that was in the month of March, I believe, a business weekend in Atlanta. So go up there, speak with different heads of business and things like that. Financial literacy courses, which is important, I think, especially for guys that go to the NFL, understanding how their money is managed. It's really important for everyone, but especially those guys that could get taken advantage of at the next level. We've seen that in the past with former Florida players. So financial literacy, that's good to know. Probably something that should be taught. Then leadership development and character education. That's something Napier said he'll get a little bit of a hand in, helping kind of form that curriculum a little bit. But just kind of ways to help the player be on the field is kind of what this Gator Made program is going to be, kind of setting you up for life after football. If you don't play in the NFL, but they get you a great internship and you can get signed with a really nice, big company, and you go pro and that, get yourself a nice paycheck. There's nothing wrong with that either. So really, really impressive hearing him talk about that. And then the final thing, and I think some people have been waiting to see this, but this is the org chart for Florida football. So Billy's Army, Napier Army, here it is. Luckily, some of these are kind of, I feel willing to share this because you can't read everything, but you can kind of see just the departments they have here. Offense, defense, game changers, nutrition, sports science, operations, athletic training, personnel department, football marketing, academics, Gator Made, aviation, video, IT, and equipment. So these are all branches of the University of Florida football organizational chart with Billy Napier at the top here. I know this is something people have talked about with all the hires being made, but here's kind of a blurry org chart here. And you can just see kind of where are all these hires going. Well, here it is. They're not being put to waste, and there is a plan, obviously, for all of them. So, the more I hear Napier talk, the more impressed I am. I was there with with some high school coaches and some other people that were, non-affiliated with Florida. I hadn't heard Napier talk very much, and they were all surprised how analytical he was, kind of his demeanor, and he was someone that was really could command a room. Interesting guy to hear speak, really thoughtful, and obviously he's put a lot of thought into his plan for Florida football. So that was just a kind of a quick 30-minute look into what was talked about at these clinics. I think Florida football has got a pretty good head man in terms of plan and vision. Now he's got to go execute that plan and vision. But he gets to start in a week from today, I believe, in spring football, which is right around the corner. So we'll kind of get back in the next couple of weeks once spring football starts. Hopefully we get to watch a little bit of it, and then I'll kind of let you guys know what I'm seeing there. But until then, thanks for watching.